I was always one of these employees who questioned everything. There was annoying ones. That's a pivotal moment. Do I stay? Do I go? Do I push on to that next stage? When you're working, what you want to do is you want to go home and feel good about yourself, that you're adding to the public good. We lost 70% of our business overnight.
If you're looking to be inspired, motivated and educated by the business journeys and lessons learned of Leeds business owners, then this is the podcast for you. I'm your host, Phil Fraser. Before we start, I have one simple request. Please hit the follow or subscribe button on the app that you're listening on. Today's guest launched his business off the back of his employer going into administration. Hear how he did it, the pride he feels when his employees leave to run their own businesses, and listen how he shows us where to find so much business support right here in Leeds. There's also some great advice for anyone making outbound sales calls. So, let's get into another great episode. On today's Leeds Business Podcast, we have Faresh Maisura, founder of Blueberry Marketing. Hi, Faresh.
Hi, Phil. How you doing? You well?
I'm good. Now, tell us all what Blueberry Marketing do.
Yeah, sure. So Blueberry Marketing, we specialise in business development services for both public and private sector organisations. So we've been going about 19 years now, and we focus on business to business in particular. So just to give you a bit of flavour, we work with the likes of AQA, National Timber Group, West Yorkshire Combined Authority, number of universities across the country, the AA, again, just to give you a bit of a flavour.
Okay. Now, you said you've been going 19 years. Take us back 19 years. How did the business start?
Like a lot of students, I didn't really know what I wanted to do after university. So I didn't apply for many jobs. I saw a job advertised for a financial planning certificate individual. I applied for it, went to 6 interviews and managed to get the job. And it was actually commission only at the time, working in financial services. I did it for 4 or 5 months and I was quite pleased that I was getting educated. I was getting my FPC 1 and 2 certificates. Anyway, 4 months in, I had a bit of confidence crisis in that I was sat in front of an individual who's a little bit older than me. I was 21 and quite green. And I was trying to advise him on his finances and what he should do. And I thought to myself, do you know what? I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be doing this. So I left and I joined a company called Specialist Computer Centres. Now, what was interesting was that it was an IT support role, but I didn't know how to use a computer. Which doesn't help. But anyway, I did relatively well there. And what I understood was then how to manage people like engineers and people that you don't know what they do day to day. I joined a company called Computer Centre. I ran a shop briefly for a year, which was a really random thing. I worked for Salford University in the careers service. And then finally, I worked for an IT company that did CRM solutions. I really enjoyed myself there. My boss at the time, Anna, she was fantastic. One of these individuals who is really puts yourself and puts your needs above hers. But unfortunately, 5 years in, I got called into the office and I was a bit upset, kind of wondered what was going on. And unfortunately, we got found that we were made redundant. And unfortunately, the company the banks had called money in and, she had to do this. Anyway, my first instinct was, because Anna was a friend as well, and I really respected her, much everything she'd done for me. I just thought, well, look, I'll stay on and see what we can do. So I stayed on within the business for 2 or 3 weeks. Interestingly enough, during that time, a buyer was found and we got told that we got our jobs back. Anyway, during that period, Anna said to me, because I was always one of these employees who questioned everything, there was annoying ones who, why are you doing this and why are you doing that? And it's very easy when you're not in the hot seat. Anna had said to me, look, you should run your own business. And she said to me, look, rather than join the new employers, why don't you set up your own business and contract back to them? So the very next day, I went to Cardiff to meet the new owners, propositioned it to them, and after a bit of a conversation, Blueberry was born. So we then set up in the Leeds Business Incubator.
Okay, so what were Blueberry doing for this company?
So Blueberry were doing lead generation and appointment setting, so essentially telemarketing. So what we were doing is setting them leads for their sales team, their marketing team, to go out and sell their wares. So my first contract was working 10 days a month for this organisation, working on a daily rate and an appointment bonus as well at the same time. And that was my first 3-month contract. I was quite glad I did it, actually, because my other choice was to go to Australia travelling. But I felt like if I did that, then I'd come back and, still wonder about what I do. So, opportunity sometimes happens in the strangest ways. And I suppose you've got to make the most of it when that time arises.
Sure. So this was just you personally contracting to them. You didn't have a business or anything like that.
Exactly. I didn't have a business. I didn't have a business plan. I didn't have an idea. If I'm totally honest with you, when I first started Blueberry, I didn't really plan to run it for long or plan to run it as a company. What I thought I'd do is I thought I'd contract out the businesses, understand their sales and marketing processes, and then maybe think about something that I wanted to do. So I originally did it, as silly as it sounds, for the education, to learn about. I'm thinking, well, people are paying me to learn about their business and sell their business. Actually, that's a pretty good gig. And that was the plan. But it was only when, I sold in more days than I could do, and I started taking someone on and I realized I could train them, that I thought, hey, there's something in this. It's worth pursuing with.
So when was the flip from just you to then going, actually, I'm going to turn this into a proper grown-up company?
Yeah, do you know what? The flip was quite early on. Within that first year, we were based in the Leeds Beckett business incubator at Queen Square, and it was great because you've got a lot of help and support there at the time. You've got like consultants on hand, you've got other businesses you can ask questions to, and I think when we got to 3 or 4 employees, which was after 6 months, I thought there's something in this. There's a bit of demand. We can train people. Hey, let's take it forward and see what happens. I think if I'm totally honest with you, for the first 4 or 5 years, I was always still, when you're at university and it's not your home necessarily and it's a bit of a holiday. Well, the workplace was the same, because as bad as this sounds, when I got made redundant, I didn't want to tell my parents, because they'd tell me, well, what you're doing there and what you're messing about for, and go and get a proper job, etc. And obviously in those first years, you make a bit of money, but you're covering your costs, you're paying wages, and your paramount importance is paying your staff. So I didn't want to shout about it to all and sundry. So it was probably only after about 4 or 5 years that I thought, hey, actually, when I started actually paying myself properly, there's something in this and it's worth pursuing.
Okay, so you subcontracted you, then you brought people in to do some work as well.
That's correct, yeah.
Which I assume you just sold to them.
Yeah.
Was there any point where you thought, right, okay, I'm going to make this a proper business, I'm going to have a business plan, I'm going to do some planning, or was it all still organic at that point?
No, it's a good question, actually. I think it was about 2011. If I'm honest, I had a bit of confidence crisis, in terms of what had happened was we'd hit a bit of a plateau where my number 2 had handed in his notice. 2 of our top clients had reduced their spend quite significantly. So we were having to we were having to be creative and get business in from all and sundry. And I thought to myself, I felt a bit of an imposter. Am I doing the right thing? Is this something I should be sticking with? And I think I then seeked help. So I looked around, and I found a course, something called the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business course, which I did. I also went to see a mentor and had some mentoring, and then and then flipped the situation around. And actually, I learned a lot from that experience, which I'm sure I'll talk about in a minute. But yeah, that's the moment when you think that's a pivotal moment. Do I stay? Do I go? Do I push on to that next stage?
Okay. So tell us about the mentoring and the Goldman Sachs course.
Yeah, do you know what? It was fantastic. So as an individual, you've obviously, when you start in business, you don't have all the answers, and you know what you're doing, but obviously you can't ask your customers. You can ask your friends, but they're not necessarily always in business and what have you. And when I did that course, there's 30 individuals on the course who are from different walks of life and different businesses, different sizes and scale. And I think by being involved in that environment, I had a guy on my cohort called Neil, who ran a £20 million marketing business in Sheffield. And I'd ask Neil every question under the sun. And Neil would kindly answer it too. But the idea was you'd work on your own business in the module. So you'd look at employee engagement, diversification, growth strategies, exit planning, but you'd focus everything on your own business. So by the end of it, you mentioned about a business plan, you'd have a growth plan for yourself. But I found that peer network element absolutely amazing. I mean, I'm still in touch with all these people today. In fact, I went to the Leeds match a few weeks ago with someone from the course. A few others went on holiday to different places, and it's a real community. And I mean, what I'd say to people, look, there's things like Goldman Sachs, there's things like Help to Grow, there's things like the Alternative Board. Sometimes things like this are really useful, just to talk things out with other people in business who kind of understand your situation and sometimes can give you a little bit of help and advice.
Okay. And the thing with mentoring, and I do a bit of work with business owners as a business sounding board, doing that exact same thing of, I've got this issue. I can't sit in front of my team and go, guys, I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm making it up, but I think this might be a good idea. With mentoring, I think most people just need somebody who's a bit further down the track. So you had Neil, who was obviously doing something similar to you, but we're just slightly further down the track. And I feel, I'm sure you find the same, that people are always willing to help, aren't they?
Absolutely. Do you know what? The biggest thing I'll say is that that's so true, particularly within the great country that we live in, that everyone is always willing to help. Just to answer your other question about mentors, yeah, I really agree. I'm the type of person myself is I like to see someone else's path on what they've done and how they've gone about it. And I think it's really important in a mentor if you've got people who are like that you can ask questions to, because then they can give you the benefit of their experience. I know I've greatly benefited from that in my career anyway.
Excellent. Okay, so let's go back to the blueberry story. You're growing. You've been on Goldman Sachs. You've got your mentor. What's the next stage in the journey?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting because as a result of the Goldman Sachs course itself, we came up with three things. So the three things that we came up with was one, to move into particular areas and public services. We now work 65% in that area. We decided to run something called the Blueberry Academy. And what that's about is we've got like a series of modules that we run, things like CV workshops, account management training, do's and don'ts, silly things like dress wear in terms of what you should wear, what you shouldn't wear, how you should come across, how to do handshakes, really, really random stuff. No neuro-linguistic programming, but things that I think are useful to individuals, not just while they're here, but when they're not here as well. We also did one of the issues I mentioned before about my number two leaving. And I kind of thought we were at a stage where we were training people, then sometimes they'd leave. And I kind of thought to myself, right, I've got some really good people here. What can I do to retain these individuals? So one of the things that we came up with is to do an EMI scheme, and that's called an Enterprise Management Initiative. And what that means is essentially you're giving your colleagues or your staff members B shares in the business, so that there's that shared goal. So we did that 10 years ago. 2 years ago, we added some more individuals to it. And I'm pleased to say in October that paid out. So it was quite nice actually to be able to, meet individual staff, hand some checks out for them to be able to do some things that they wanted to do for a while, whether it was put towards a house or put towards a car or go on a holiday, whatever they did. But yeah, that's what we did as a result of that course.
Okay. And would you recommend people listening do the same with their businesses? I mean, has it been a big success?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. To get that shared goal and get everyone batting in the same direction, I think things like EMI schemes really, really help. I'm one of these individuals where I prefer doing things in a team than I do on my own. And like I say, I think what it really did is focus individuals to understand, look, we're all aiming for that common goal and we've got that shared thing that we want to achieve. So yeah, I'd very much recommend something like that, particularly in businesses where you've got, I don't know, they want to retain top salespeople or top individuals, or they want that consistency really helps them. I think things like EMI schemes really help manage that consistency over time.
Now, you've mentioned working in public sector. What do you say, 65, 70% of business is public sector?
Public sector, third sector, and education. So we work with about 27 universities, work with the Department for Business and Trade as an example. We work with many growth hubs and, combined authorities now around the country.
Okay. Now, lots of people, as soon as you say working with public sector, run off scared because it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare to get in front of them. Then it's a nightmare to run it. Give us your experience and any advice you might have that for anybody who wants to get in front of, any type of public sector.
I used to do a lot of IT, and we had a lot of IT contracts. And I thought to myself, well, when you're working, what you want to do is you want to go home and feel good about yourself, that you're adding to the public good. And we thought, well, if we're working on programs and we're promoting things to businesses that are going to help them, actually, it's quite easy to sell to the staff. And actually, it's a win-win for us because we can do well at it as well. And plus, you go home feeling good about yourself. So we decided to do that. But anyway, with the public sector, it's it can be challenging at times. Challenging in that sometimes budgets are limited, the specific deadlines to meet, etc. But I think when you've worked with one or two, you can often use that to get 3, 4, and 5. And it's very much like the Smiths. If something's worked, someone will look at how it's worked and implement the same model. So, that's worked particularly well for ourselves anyway.
Okay. Let's flip things on its head then. Tell us about some of the pain points of the business journey so far.
Oh, right, pain points. Like I mentioned at that point in 2011, when I looked at mentors, etc. I think at the time then, I suppose I had a bit of anxiety, where you have that imposter syndrome in that, look, am I doing the right thing? Is this for me? And I suppose the benefit I had is because I'm brown, you couldn't see it in my face, but inside I was dying, and inside I could, I I was nervous. And, I think what you find is then when you speak to other people, like I say, who've trodden the path and been there, I took a lot of comfort from their experiences and the ways that they've dealt with it. I spoke to some other businesses as well who are much larger than me, and they'd tell me they'd experienced the same thing. And I think when you can normalize something and understand, well, okay, these are the routes that people have taken, I think that helps. At that same time, I think I mentioned that 2 customers had cut their spend. You just have to roll up your sleeves and deal with it and get on and get other customers in. And in fairness, being a lead generation company, if you can't do it, then you shouldn't really be in business. Other hardships have been during the pandemic. We lost 70% of our business overnight or within a week. And that was quite a pivotal moment because obviously furlough had not been announced at this stage. Obviously, all the schools had closed. So obviously, all the educational establishments had closed. Furlough wasn't announced. You've got a staff of 40 or 50 at the time, and you're thinking, right, what the hell am I going to do? What we did was quite interesting and really set us up for the future. So we were working with 4 local authorities down south, and we were doing kind of Brexit reporting. So understanding how businesses were coping with, the impending Brexit and what measures they were putting in place. But obviously this COVID thing started raising its head. So what we decided to do is we decided to ask some questions around COVID and how they were coping and was it affecting them, etc. Anyway, when the Brexit contract had finished, we took a decision internally. Look, let's just carry on working. Let's just crack on. And so we worked 4 weeks free of charge, probably to the cost of £6,000-7,000, because I didn't want to let staff go and let them go home or throw the towel in because of we had to close. And at the same time, they were finding information useful. Anyway, about 2 months later, we found out that the Department of Business and Trade absolutely loved the reporting that we were giving them, and they must have told several other local authorities. So then we ended up towards the end of that year working with probably half of the growth hubs through the UK, doing obviously COVID reporting and support, and it was great as well because we were classed as key workers. We were really, really busy, but also we were offering. We had to at the time because demand was so great. We're offering positions to people who were out of work at the time to get them in temporary to help us manage these contracts. So yeah, it was a really, really interesting time for the business as well. And I suppose, out of adversity, how you can make it work for you.
Sure. Before we go on to my next question, I want to talk to the listeners and viewers about the Leeds Business Podcast Fair Deal. The Leeds Business Podcast Fair Deal has 2 sides to it. My side of it is every week, free of charge, I bring you inspirational, motivational and fascinating business owners like Faresh. And you, listener and viewer, have one thing to do. You need to recommend this podcast to one other person you feel will get a benefit from it. Sound like a good deal, Faresh?
Fantastic deal, Phil.
There you go. It's a good deal. Now, you specialise in lead generation. What advice would you give to businesses for their lead generation? I mean, obviously, apart from using Blueberry Marketing.
Yeah, sure. I suppose 2 or 3 bits I'd give them is think of your market, think of who you're aiming at, think of the individuals as well within that business, whether it's the sales and marketing director, the HR, the managing director. Think about why they'd buy from you as well and what your product means to them. I think sometimes a lot of times people can have a very scattergun approach, but if you get the process right, you get the data right, and you get the messaging right, you've got a much better chance of success. So what we do essentially isn't cold calling. It's very highly targeted, dependent upon those type of individuals within business you're trying to speak to. Also, there are tools out there as well, like there's a B2B hierarchy of needs, which kind of explains why people should buy and the reasons they buy. And sometimes you've got to make sure that you're fulfilling some of these things, so that if they're looking to buy from you or somebody bigger, well, give them the reasons to work for you. So I'd always say look at some of these tools. There's quite a process behind it rather than just picking up the phone and hoping for the best.
Okay, give us some pointers on that process then.
With the process, I suppose part of it is looking at, like you say, the business itself. Let me give you an example. Okay, you're selling a CRM solution. Okay, so who do you need to? Who are you? What type of business are you selling to? Where have you sold it before? Where have you had success? Because quite often people will buy when they understand that you've had success in their markets because they can relate to it. What you also then need to do is think of the individuals within the business who are buying it. So if I give you an example, if you're selling to an IT manager, the IT manager, might want a system because it's the information is managed It's stopped going walkies. It's easy for them to analyze, the data security. They can do the GDPR on it. They're building the database. Where if you're selling to a sales manager, there may be a very different aspect. They may want the database because, I don't know, they had 6 salespeople in the last year, 3 are gone. They want to make sure that information stays within the database. So again, a lot of the time it's about just thinking about the markets themselves, the individuals, and why they should buy, and giving them compelling reason to meet. Things like lead generation, they won't sell your product or service, but what they'll do is take it to the next stage. So it's often looking at that sales process, breaking it down, understanding, well, how can you engage with them? So for different businesses that we work with, the engagement strategies will always be slightly different, depending on their processes and how they sell.
So the key to that is sort of good old fashioned sales training, which is, features and benefits, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
And just to clarify for people who are watching, listening, you're not the sort of company that rings on my mobile phone and tells me, I've had a crash, or do I want to buy insurance or anything like that?
No, not at all, not at all. I mean, we only do B2B services. We don't do, we've had opportunities in the past, in fairness, to do business to consumer, and, some of them are quite big deals. But I think for us in particular, in the way that we work, I think if I took something like that on board, we'd have a high labour turnover, and it's not really what it's not really what to do or aspire to.
Give us a flavour of the size of the company now and where you see it going forward, because one of the things about business is you grow the business and you keep growing, and then it's like, well, what do I do? Just keep growing, or is there a plan, or
Yeah, it's a really good point, because it's something we've been exploring actually. So we're about 55 strong at the moment. We've always had a positive cash flow. We've grown, relatively, I suppose, tortoise and the hare. We've been the tortoise with steady growth, year on year. We're at a stage now where I mentioned to you, we've had the CMI scheme in the last year, and that's now finished. And I'm quite surprised actually, because nobody's left yet. And I think that's a good thing. But what we're now looking to do is, look, I've had some great staff members or colleagues who've been with us 15 years. They've got married here, they've had children, etc. And what I'd like to be able to do is really give them something back as well. So we're actually looking at becoming an employee-owned business. So we're going through some consultation now to help do that.
Okay, so what will that look like? Are you talking an EOT or
EOT? Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, exactly that.
Okay, so some people may have heard the term EOT before. Just give us an idiot's guide to an EOT.
Yeah, sure. Like I said, I'm quite early stages. We're looking at it, but what it involves is essentially selling the business to your staff members. So it involves putting it in a trust where your staff members, and essentially it's like a management buyout without the 51% of shares. Each year, then they get a bonus. There's a board set up within the business who will then manage that business and take it forward. So essentially, it's not necessarily giving away the business to your staff, but it's almost selling it to your staff, but at more favourable rates.
And that goes in stages, isn't it? So they don't have to find a big lump of cash today.
Exactly right.
It's sort of it's generated from the business, and then that pays for it, and then that comes back to you.
Exactly right. Yes, Phil.
Okay. Now, every week we ask our guests to give us a how-to. So, Faresh, tell us what you're going to teach us how to do, and teach us how to do it.
Yeah, sure. Well, so what I was going to talk about is actually how to start up a business. What I'd always say to people is look, think about your market, think about who you're selling to, think about why they'd buy, think about why they'd buy from you, but also look at different support mechanisms out there. So within Leeds itself, as an example, there are things like the Adventure Programme, which is run by the West Yorkshire Combined Authority. That's for businesses from 0 to 3 years. Even if you've just got an idea or a concept, they'll help you develop that concept. They'll provide training and advice. There are people like Leeds Beckett University, Leeds University, Trinity University, who'll run incubator schemes as well, just to give you that help and support in them early years. Also, make sure you just do a bit of research, you get your pricing correct as well. So, look, with all these things combined, you'll be in a much better position when you launch. The last bit I'd say on that as well is think about how much you need to live. Because often people have a business idea, but haven't thought about, well, I'm going to run out of money after a period of time. And it's important to think about, it's almost like cricket run rate, where if you can be a little bit ahead of the run rate, you don't have to accept clients that you don't want, and you can do things in the way that you'd like to do. So, like I said, I'd say utilize all these things. But if anyone is thinking of starting up a business or, wants to talk briefly, I'm more than happy to, signpost in the right direction if that ever helps.
Okay, some great resources there. So you've got Adventure, you've got Leeds Beckett, Leeds Trinity, Leeds Uni. They've all got programs that will support people who are looking to start up, and Faresh has very kindly offered his services as well. Some great advice there. Faresh, you mentioned that you're entrepreneur in residence at Trinity or Beckett? Trinity.
Leeds Beckett.
Leeds Beckett. Tell us a little bit about that.
I was asked in about 2017, and it was something that, I've been really, really grateful to be involved in. I mentioned before that when we started up in business, we started in the Leeds Beckett Business Incubator, which was their setting for new businesses. There's now something called the Knowledge Exchange, but we got a lot out of it, and we grew. And the same time I was there, there were several other companies who've grown quite significantly as well. So I think with universities in particular, sometimes people don't really know what they do, or sometimes people are not really aware of how they can help, aside from general courses they can do. But as a business ourselves, we've had a lot of help and support from the universities. We've hired staff, we've put people on programs, we've done student research projects. In fact, a couple of years ago, 22 of our female staff did the We Can project, which is a management and leadership course for females in particular. We've got a lot of working mums working with us in that kind of thing as well. So sometimes that helps them with the confidence aspects. So I was asked to do it, and actually I really bang the drum about what universities do. Like I say, in our region alone, we're blessed with 3 universities here. And what you'll often find is when a business works with a university, they'll go on to do more things. But the trouble is, some of them don't know where the front door is. And sometimes, in fairness, universities may not be as accessible to businesses as they should be. But I know that's changing, and there's a lot of work done behind the scenes to make that more plausible.
That's brilliant. And like I say, there'll be links to all of that in the show notes if anybody wants to investigate that a little bit more. So in this new series of Leeds Business Podcast, we've got a new segment, and it's called My Brilliant Business Idea. Now, all us entrepreneurs have always got a million brilliant business ideas rolling around in our heads that we never ever do. So each week I'm going to ask our guests what their brilliant business idea is. So Faresh, what's your brilliant business idea?
My brilliant business idea, well, not so brilliant business idea. I remember when I was doing my A-levels back in the 90s, so many moons ago, and I sat around doing my homework, and I thought, wouldn't it be great if there was a kind of homework club where you could ring up someone, get some assistance with it. One, because your parents either can't be bothered or are not able to help you, and you're able to get that help. I went in, I looked into it, and I remembered in Manchester there's a teacher training college. So I kind of thought, wouldn't it be great if you could get people from the teacher training college to actually be the people on the phone, to actually then supplement the idea. And by doing it, they would get CPD points or help towards a qualification. Like a lot of ideas that many of us had, it never went anywhere. But yeah, that was my brilliant business idea. And I suppose the good thing now, if it was done now, you'd have subscription models, you've got AI, you've got all sorts. So yeah, this was some 30 years ago, and I'm sure there's been a lot of development since anyway.
Brilliant. That's fantastic. I mean, I could have done with some help when I did my A-levels as well.
I know. Do you know what? It's one of them things you think about then, and you're thinking, obviously, as you see things develop and technology develop, things actually probably became a reality, and there's probably hundreds of them now, in fairness.
Yep. Faresh, that's brilliant. Right now, before we leave, every guest gets to give a shout out to another Leeds business. Who are you going to give a shout out to?
Right, so I'm going to give a shout out to Ryan Evans from RME Sports. So Ryan, I mentioned before that we've had 24 people starting business after leaving Blueberry. So Ryan was actually a student at Leeds Beckett University last year. He decided to formulate a sports management social media company. He also does our social media as well. He used to work with us part-time. He's now dropped down to 1 day a week while he gathers clients in his own business. Really good lad, starting out. We're really happy with what he does. I wouldn't trust him with mine, if he didn't do a good job. So yeah, I just want to give Ryan a shout out.
Okay, and there'll be links to Ryan in the show notes. I'm just delighted that you haven't given 28 shout outs for all the businesses that have started out of Blueberry.
Do you know, I was going to get 3 or 4 in, but I thought, yeah, okay.
All right. So actually, if anybody started a business who was at Blueberry, give me a shout, and I'll post you on our LinkedIn post when we publish this episode.
Great stuff. I'll send you some links, Phil.
All right, great stuff. Faresh, it's been absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it. Take care.
So that's it. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Make sure you hit the follow button so every new episode gets sent straight to your phone. See you next week.